It is time for us to turn our attention to the Australian Open with Colm Boohig. Colm, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. Morning, Nathan.
Last time I spoke to you, I was full of the joy and possibility that we might end up with Nadal versus Djokovic, but then Nadal just couldn't do it and didn't make it. And Novak Djokovic and Margaret Court are ultimately, when this all finishes, going to be the two most winningest Grand Slam champions of all time. And what a beautiful couple they will make. What a match made in heaven they are.
Yeah. Novak Djokovic, 9 Australian Open finals, 9 Australian Open victories, and he spread his dominance down under across 13 years when he won his first title in 2008 against Wilfried Tsonga at the age of 20. And just like Rafa Nadal has French Open dominance, and just like Roger Federer has Wimbledon, Djokovic has Australian Open. Exactly 50% of his total Grand Slams have been won in Melbourne. But look, this has been a difficult year really for Novak Djokovic, but particularly the last 2 weeks have been troublesome for him. I mean, there's the now infamous Australian news report that alleged that Djokovic issued a list of demands to the Tennis Australia chief, Craig Tiley, which Djokovic said was not a list of demands, it was a list of ideas and recommendations received from his fellow players that were misinterpreted as a list of demands. But Djokovic was destroyed worldwide for the alleged list of demands. And of course, Nick Kyrgios also now famously called them a tool. And that war of words continued, although it's a pretty one-sided war of words on Kyrgios' side. And then when the tournament started itself, Djokovic in the first match, he beat Jeremy Chardy. And after that match, he was asked, I feel you were a bit frustrated before the tournament. The post-match interviewer asked him this on court, to which Djokovic responded, well, what do you mean frustrated? And the crowd got pretty excited about that answer. And then he was going relatively smoothly, won the first 2 rounds, dropped a set in the second round against TFO, said the surface is a bit too fast for him. But then in the third round, it kind of all changed, the narrative around Djokovic, in that he was taken to 5 sets by Taylor Fritz from the United States, which he really shouldn't have been. And he said he suffered an abdominal injury in that match. He subsequently said that he tore a muscle. And basically what transpired was that people didn't really believe him, or people certainly thought in many quarters that he was over-egging the injury, which obviously frustrated Djokovic more. He was exaggerating an injury that he claimed he had.
Sports people never overreact to being accused of faking an injury. There's no reported instance in history.
Exactly.
Where accusing a sports person of faking an injury has resulted in
19 years on, this could be the next most famous moment of that. But then in the fourth round against Milos Raonic, who he always beats Raonic, he said that an hour beforehand he nearly pulled out. He nearly withdrew because of the injury. After the match, he said if it was any other tournament, he wouldn't be playing. Then in the quarterfinals, he plays Alexander Zverev, which is one of the worst quarterfinal Grand Slam matches I've ever seen. It was errors strewn by both players. Djokovic smashed his rackets to smithereens halfway through that match in frustration about how badly he was playing. And it wasn't until the semi-final against Aslan Karatsev, the total unknown player a week beforehand, the world number 114, when he won that comfortably in straight sets. After that match, Djokovic said, okay, I feel good now. I feel a bit more comfortable. So going into this final against Daniil Medvedev, a lot of people were saying, despite Djokovic's clear dominance at the Australian Open, despite the fact that he's world number 1, and will now be world number 1 for the 311th week come March, which is going to surpass Roger Federer's all-time record as most weeks at number 1. So despite all those factors, a lot of people thought Medvedev had a chance of winning this match because Medvedev has been on a 20-match unbeaten run. He's won 12 of his last 12 matches against top 10 players. And he just beat Djokovic at the season-ending ATP finals in London. He dismantled Stefanos Tsitsipas in the semi-final, and Tsitsipas had beaten Rafa Nadal in the quarter-final. So a lot of people thought Medvedev had a chance here. Lo and behold, in 2 hours, Djokovic has destroyed Medvedev at 33 years of age. 8 years Medvedev's senior. Djokovic won his 18th Grand Slam title. He's now just 2 behind the other big 2. And he showed everybody, because that first set could have gone either way, and he won it right at the end of it. He broke Medvedev at 6-5. Medvedev broke in the first game of the second set, and he won only 3 more games after that. That's how dominant Djokovic was. He's still world-class. He's still unbelievable. He's still the best, regardless of what people think of him.
Yeah, he and more than likely will end up with the most Grand Slams. At this stage, you would make him favourite to do so.
I'd say it's going to be the toss of a coin between him and Nadal. They'll both definitely surpass Federer, who was approaching 40 years of age, hasn't played in over a year, had knee surgery last June, almost certainly won't win another Grand Slam. Famous last words, but I doubt he will. So it's going to be neck and neck between Nadal and Djokovic. And Goran Ivanisevic, who was one of Djokovic's coaches, said just that in his post-final press conference, because the coaches get interviewed as well in press conferences. And Ivanisevic said it's a straight shootout between Djokovic and Nadal. And he also said that Djokovic really needed this win. And he did. Djokovic has not had a good last 12 months for reasons that we all know. But even in just tennis terms, that disqualification at the US Open, he was probably going to at least get to the final of that US Open. And then, by his standards, his pretty drab display against Nadal at the French Open final. So he really needed this victory.
Okay. Medvedev had some nice things to say about Djokovic. All of a sudden, Medvedev's standing in our eyes is lowered as well. Here's what he said.
Just to tell you a small story, guys. First, I practiced with Novak when I was, I think, like 500 in the world or 600 in the world in Monaco. And so he was already number one, just won Wimbledon. And I thought, okay, he's not going to speak to me or something, because the guy was a god for me. And I came there, and because I was shy, so I didn't speak. So he was asking me questions, talking to me like a friend. I was really surprised, and it never changed since I was 600 in the world or 4 in the world. You're a great sport, great person, so congrats to you.
Sickening.
The PR battle starts here.
Yeah. 30 Love, Osaka is on the cusp of transcending the sport. So a new superstar has been born over the last couple of years in Naomi Osaka.
Yeah, 23 years of age, 4 Grand Slam titles already. She is the first player since Monica Seles in 1991 to win her first 4 Grand Slam finals. And the only other player in the history of the Open era who has achieved that feat is Roger Federer. So she's in seriously good company there. The thing with Osaka is that, like, she's already fast approaching being the greatest hardcourt player ever, because of the dominance that she's had at the US Open and Australian Open. She split those in terms of the 4 Grand Slams that she's won. So the next question for her, she's only 23, but the next question is now, can she take that hardcourt dominance onto the surfaces of grass and clay, i.e. can she progress past the 3rd round of Roland Garros and Wimbledon, neither of which she has ever done before. And I think that will separate her from the rest, because unlike the hegemony of the big 3 of the men's game, the women's game is so strong now, with like the likes of Ash Barty, who still, believe it or not, is world number 1 because of relatively skewed WTA rankings amid COVID-19. But you also have Bianca Andreescu and Iga Swiatek and Sophia Kenin, and Serena Williams is still very much around. So it's a really strong field, but Osaka's on the cusp of separating herself from that field. And her final performance against Jennifer Brady on Saturday proved just that, because Brady played really, really well in that first set. There was a moment, I don't know if you saw it, but it was 4-all in the first set. Brady had this beautiful running backhand lob over Osaka to set up a break point. Osaka saved that break point with the, brave beyond belief forehand, which she probably slightly mishit, but she certainly was aiming for the far left corner deep into the court, and she got that. And then about 10 minutes later, she had not just won the first set, but she was about 2-love up in the second set. And very soon after that, the match was over. And they're the very fine margins. And when you're playing against these elite players, if the door creaks open, you have to smash it open further. And Brady wasn't able to do that. But just for the quick word on Brady, it's a remarkable achievement. I mean, a year ago, she was a relative unknown. And then since COVID, she moved from America to Germany, stepped up her training. She won her first WTA title last summer, reached the US Open semi-final against Osaka in what was a brilliant match. And this is her first Grand Slam final. But most noteworthy out of that was, you recall that 72 players were forced into a hard hotel room quarantine after the positive coronavirus cases from those flights in. And 51 of those 72 were singles competitors. And only one of those players got past the 3rd round. And that was Brady, who got all the way to the final. So the only training she was able to do for 2 weeks was she upturned her mattress that she was sleeping on and used that as a wall to hit balls against. And she borrowed a treadmill from Tennis Australia, and she avoided Netflix so that she wouldn't go down a series rabbit hole, and was just very disciplined in one room for 14 days, and she got to a Grand Slam final. So it's a brilliant achievement. But when it comes to that elite level and those really big moments, Osaka is peerless at the moment. I mean, she's won more Grand Slam titles than regular tour titles, 4-3. So she's quite remarkable. And in terms of hard courts, it would take a lot to stop her. Serena Williams is very easily beaten by her in the semi-final. The next step for Osaka to be one of those players where a casual sports fan or someone who doesn't know anything about tennis, do you know the name Naomi Osaka? We're probably still not there yet. but we're very close to being there. And I think it was Simon Briggs, who's the Telegraph's tennis correspondent, said that certainly in this side of the world, she'll probably need to make a serious dent at Wimbledon in order to be along the recognizable names, the worldwide recognizable names like Nadal, Federer, Djokovic, Serena, and Andy Murray. She's still probably not that there, but she's very close to achieving that.
All right, 40 love point. Fans were great, but hosting a tournament is hard.
Yeah, I mean, God love Craig Tiley, who's the chief of Tennis Australia. He gave an interview to Australian media over the weekend and said that he's been so stressed about this that his wife and young kids have had to move out during the tournament in the last 6 weeks. He's averaging about 3 to 4 hours sleep a night at best, he said. He said he goes on Zoom calls every night with all the women and men players and basically hears their grievances. And he's the only person doing that because he doesn't want his staff to feel the wrath of that vitriol. And he said it's okay when you get verbal abuse on a Zoom call once, but to get it 15 days in a row has taken its mental toll on him. But there's a lot of controversy. I mean, anecdotally, a friend of mine lives in Melbourne and said a lot of people did not want this tournament to happen. And of course, halfway through, there was a 5-day circuit breaker and there was no fans allowed. And it's transpired that Tiley has said that Tennis Australia are going to lose an estimated $100 million just from hosting this tournament because of running it with limited crowds. Then there was the 5 days without crowds, which means there was no merchandise sold. The transport cost and stringent quarantine measures for over 1,000 people involved in the Australian Open with players, coaches and staff. It's cost a fortune, and they've already exhausted their cash reserves, which were about $80 million. They're going to need a loan of about between $40 to $60 million. And basically, they're relying on the future success of the tournament to just break even. And the reason, I mean, a lot of people say, well, why did you go ahead with this? And it was basically just sheer bloody mindedness to prove that you can host the Grand Slam with fans during a global pandemic. And I think the other side of it, which is what I've heard from reports, is that, frankly, they were worried that if they didn't host the tournament this year, that they were going to lose it potentially to maybe Japan or China or Singapore. But, that's a strange theory to have on their parts, or maybe feeling to have on their parts, is because Melbourne Park is contracted to host the Australian Open until 2039. So they have it, but they were worried that they were going to lose it to the Asian market. And there'll be no more Grand Slam in the Australian Open. So they feel it's the justified measure that they actually went ahead and took all those risks and hosted a tournament. But there's a significant cost, both in the human side of it for Craig Tiley and in the financial side for Tennis Australia.
All right, and the 40 love point, game point, the big three in Serena. We've talked about Djokovic, Federer and Nadal. You say it's a straight shootout at this point. Nadal is 2 ahead of Djokovic, and obviously we're heading into, is he 2 ahead now, or is he only 1 ahead?
Yeah,
after
2
this?
ahead now, yeah, 20 to 18.
And obviously we're heading into the French Open, so you would expect him to extend that. But Djokovic has a number of years, 3 years, is he younger?
No, just a year.
Just a year younger.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. He's 33, Nadal's 34. Federer's out of the picture, really. He's 39 and hasn't played in a year. But yeah, I was trying to doing the maths there. Okay, so Nadal's pretty much nailed on for Roland Garros. So you can add another one. That's actually the next tournament again, even though it was only the last Grand Slam before this. We're back to the regular calendar in 2021. So up next at the end of May is the French Open. So you consider that Nadal will probably win that. But then really Djokovic is the favourite for Wimbledon and the US Open. So if you continue with those maths and play on for another 2 or 3 years, that Nadal just really has the French Open and Djokovic is favourite for the other 3 Grand Slams, then Djokovic should overtake Nadal. Having said that, Nadal has actually won the US Open more than Djokovic 5 times to 3 times. So Nadal could probably notch another one at the US Open, but at the time of speaking, you'd favour Djokovic just because he's a year younger and he's the best player in the world on all surfaces. Yeah,
and the injuries that he's had, he manages to fight through heroically, like the superstar that he is. What a brave tennis player. But Serena, it now looks like, what's her best chance of actually making the same number of Margaret Court? Where's that going to be?
Wimbledon. Yeah, Wimbledon this year, and for me, that's it. That's her last chance. That's why it's so exciting, actually, the rest of this season. I mean, even on the WTA side, like, will Osaka transfer her hard court dominance to clay and grass is one narrative, but also Serena. I mean, she's level with Margaret Court now, so to surpass her on her own on top of that mountain of all-time great Grand Slam champions, to get 24, to be on her own, she needs one more. Don't think she's going to win the French. I mean, she's won the French 3 times, but I don't think she's good enough versus the other competitors that I've already mentioned earlier in the segments to win the French. Maybe the US Open, but again, there's a lot of very strong hardcore players, like not even Osaka, there are others. So for me, Wimbledon, where that's been her most success. But we haven't played Wimbledon in 2 years. So who knows what stage she'll be in at that point. But for me, that's it. I mean, it's either Wimbledon or nothing. So it'll be very exciting to see in the summer.
What's your instinct on whether or not we're going to have a Wimbledon this year?
Oh, we'll have it. We'll definitely have it. I mean, they didn't go ahead last year, Wimbledon, because they had insurance in light of a pandemic, which the other 3 Grand Slams didn't have. So they were well prepared in that regard. But they've already stated they're going to play it this year, fans or otherwise. And I mean, you'd imagine, I mean, this is obviously an assumption, but you imagine that coronavirus cases will have dropped by the summer a little bit at least. And there will probably be some allowance for fans, maybe. But even not, it'll go ahead. I mean, I'd be absolutely shocked if it didn't go ahead. They won't skip it 2 years in a row.
Well, they've got the vaccine, and they seem to be actually vaccinating people with the vaccines that they have, which, you know, seems to be a good idea in a pandemic. Who knew? 8:52 this morning. Colm Boohig, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers.